Good day everyone, Operator Starsky here, and today we're going to answer some questions. Yesterday we did the same video with my cameraman and it took some 2.5 hours to answer all of the questions in Ukrainian. After that he said that he is going to quit, so today I will be answering all the questions on my own. And question number one is: how can citizens of the world support Ukraine more in this important struggle? First of all, we need men, weapons, in particular anti-tank weapons and anti-air missiles. I must say that here in Ukraine we are all very grateful to all the people who support Ukraine and to all those who meet our refugees, because we are all very worried about our families, and on behalf of my people I would like to say thank you. Here's a question from my good friend from the United States, Crystal. What does Ukraine ideally look like for you? I think that after the war is finished, Ukraine will become a really successful country, because first of all we are going to join European Union, and of course we now have a budget for rebuilding our country. As you may already know, Russia had a budget, a reserved budget as big as $600 billion, stored mostly in the Western countries, and about $400 billion were frozen, and after the war they will be transferred to Ukraine to rebuild our beautiful country and our cities that were bombed by Russians. There's so many things to see in Ukraine actually. The Slavic world that we know it has been born in Kiev 1.5 thousand years ago. Frankly speaking, if you wanna learn more about Ukraine, you can watch tons of videos all over internet about our history and stuff. Personally, I see Ukraine as a successful European country, part of European Union. Our people are really open to all kinds of visitors and tourists, and we will be really glad to meet you and welcome you in our country after the war is finished. Band Free is asking, how long are you already in the army? What is the first thing you will do after the war? Greets from Germany. Hello Germany. Greetings from Kiev. The war in Ukraine started in 2014. First thing I did was I joined the police special forces, and it was a voluntary police battalion. In 2016 I joined the National Guard of Ukraine. We've had this new brigade that has been created specifically to fight against Russian hybrid aggression in Ukraine, and we have a huge experience of fighting against small terrorist groups as well as big regular military units of Russian Federation. First thing I'm gonna do after the war is finished is I think I will be meeting all kinds of friends and relatives. I'm going to hug my dad. I'm going to see my dog, who misses me very much. Speaking of deathcore, I heard Slaughter to Prevail was protesting the war, and Ginger is there showing Ukrainian support too. Ginger was making concerts in Russia, despite the fact that there was a war. And thing is that Ginger comes from Ukrainian city of Horlovka, which was occupied by hybrid Russian armies since 2014, and partially they weren't supporting neither Russians nor Ukrainians, you know, but after this full-scale invasion had started, they saw that Russian army brought death and destruction, and I'm really happy to say that they changed their mind, because Ginger is a really nice Ukrainian death metal band, highly advised. As for the 3D modeling, back in my days I learned Blender 3D. I wasn't really into finding a job related to 3D modeling. I did all that just for fun because it's interesting, it's funny, you know, creating stuff that doesn't exist and make it look as if it's real. First thing I did when I learned 3D modeling in Blender was a model of sushi, because I like sushi, and I made all the textures by myself in Photoshop. What kind of changes have you seen in Ukrainian military since 2014? What aspects of the military have improved the most? I come from a military family, so to say. I can say that military have changed very, very, very much. First of all, we have received a better equipment, of course. We have received better vehicles and tanks. Ukrainian tanks are much better than Russian tanks, because we have deeply modernized T-64, most successful tank that have been made back in USSR, and while improved with improved electronics and equipment, it can give Russians some hell. We have spent a lot of time training with the Canadian Army, with the Californian National Guards, and we have acquired a lot of experience in terms of military planning process for our officers, and of course everything related to combat medicine and stuff like that. Question from Brandon McKnight related to IEDs, whether we use them or not. At this very point, we don't have much need to use IEDs because we are using conventional weapons, but of course things can change. Once again, Ukraine is a cradle of guerrilla warfare. Since the beginning of the 20th century, we have used all kinds of IEDs, and we have a huge experience of creating those. Things like javelins and NLAWs do their job pretty well, and I hope that we will not have a need for guerrilla warfare, because it's a completely different kind of warfare. Do you have fear when you go to fight? Everybody does. In a combat, most helpful things are your training and your experience and knowing of the situation, because a lot of people are scared of things they don't know. Everything that happens on the war has rules. There are no death stars that just arrive and burn you with death rays. How many Polish mercenaries are fighting on your side? I'd say a lot. I cannot tell you exact numbers, but we have like full battalions of Canadians, for example, or Israeli special operations fighters. What's your favorite book? My favorite book is The Dark Tower by Stephen King. I've read all of his books. I'm his big fan since my childhood, and especially now since he's showing support to Ukrainian people. I'm looking forward to meet him, probably somehow, maybe in the future. My favorite food besides Ukrainian is Thai rice and Thai noodles. I cook both of them, and I'm not a big fan of alcohol at all. Elizabeth Markevich asked what is the biggest key to survival? If you're a soldier, again, the biggest key to survival is your training, the knowledge of your weapons, the knowledge of situation, and knowledge of your task. As for the civilians, before the invasion I've made a bunch of tutorials dedicated specifically to civilian people in Ukraine. Actually, it's a very huge topic to discuss in such a small video. Maybe some other time I will dedicate a specific video to this subject. Javier Martinez asks, 1 month ago you cannot imagine to be involved in this dreadful and radical situation. Which and how have your human values and beliefs changed? As a military, I've been preparing to this kind of situation. Again, we have a war going on in Ukraine since 2014. It's just the scale of this war have been increased. Tanks, artillery and stuff like that, we all had that since 2013. Actually, we weren't much sure whether they would attack or not. They were saying that Second World's army is unstoppable and it will definitely defeat Ukraine. By the end of December 2021, they changed their messages, saying that there's no need to escalate the situation, we are not going to attack. And that very moment I knew that the invasion is inevitable, because Russians are good at two things: killing civilians and lies. So my personal beliefs didn't change much. I still believe in humanity. I still believe that militaries should support civilians as much as they can, and it works both ways in Ukraine, because in Ukraine army and civilians are pretty much the same. We are the same people fighting for the same goals. Mike Latimer asked whether it's possible to come fight together with Ukrainian defenders without military experience, and whether he gets paid. From what I know, you must have at least some kind of experience, whether it's a military experience of service in the army or service in a law enforcement agency. It's a contract military service, which means that you are getting paid in Ukraine. What rifle do I use and what do I like about it? Okay, I'm using AK-74. It's a classic post-Soviet rifle used by all kinds of post-Soviet countries. AK-74 is famous for being a very reliable rifle, but of course it's not as precise as, for example, AR-15. You don't have to clean it, literally. You can shoot all day and use tons of rounds and it will still work. It's not afraid of being dirty, but of course you gotta take a good care after your weapons if you want it to serve you well. Actually, my favorite weapon was the weapon installed on my APC. Back in my days, I've been a commander of APC, and we've had a 30mm automatic cannon, automatic grenade launcher, a machine gun, and two laser-guided anti-tank missiles installed on the side. Actually, this APC in Ukraine, it's called BTR-3. I don't know, it was able to destroy worlds. Literally. I'm not commanding the BTR-3 anymore, but I still remember some things about it. Peter Hayes asks, why is the spirit of Ukrainian army so high and amongst Russia it is so low? What do you think about your actual enemies on the field? We don't think much about our actual enemies on the field. We just shoot them and make sure that they are dead. The spirit of Ukrainian army is so high because this is our land. We have nowhere to run away from this country, and we are fighting for those who stand behind our backs, like our families, our children, our parents. We are fighting for our world. We are defending it because we are used to live in a European country with European values. We don't want any kind of dictator, any kind of invader in our country, because this country belongs to our future generations. As for Russians, they were convinced that Ukraine has been occupied by Nazi, which is really stupid because our president is half Jewish. A couple of days ago he's had web conference with Israeli parliament. I don't think that Israeli parliament would ever like to communicate with Nazi regime. Obviously Russia is full of lies, and their propaganda is actually what they do the best. That's why they convinced Russians that they will come to Ukraine and be welcomed as liberators, and no Ukrainian wants them here in Ukraine. For example, in the occupied city of Kherson, peaceful protests against invaders are held every single day, so you can understand what kind of spirit we have, our people have in fighting against Russian aggression. Do Ukrainians watch American movies? Yes, we do, all the time. Have you seen any of those astrophysics movies, Interstellar, Contact, October Sky? I've seen them all. Yeah, I've seen all of them. Why did I learn English? Because before the army I worked as a communications person in different international projects, let's say. Have you seen the video of the Belarusian ambassador who was offered 30 pieces of silver as he left Ukraine? Yeah, of course I saw that. Unfortunately, Belarus has betrayed Ukraine. They used their territory for stationing Russian troops, for launching missiles at Ukrainian cities, and I hope that in the future, actually I'm sure that in the future they will pay for that. I have no doubt. Do you support the idea of Ukraine joining NATO eventually? Why do you think Ukraine has never joined NATO? I honestly support this idea of joining NATO. There's a lot of threats that require a reaction of whole civilized world, and I think NATO is one of those tools that can help defend civilized world against those threats, like threats like Russia. As for Ukraine, since 2014 we have changed our doctrine, and according to this doctrine we've been totally neutral. In 2014 Russia attacked Ukraine, they annexed Crimea and they occupied regions of Donbass. Since that time we have changed our doctrine towards joining NATO, but unfortunately NATO cannot accept members like countries that have ongoing conflicts, like in our case. Since that time we have developed our partnership with NATO countries, and we had a lot of mutual military exercises. My brigade participated in a lot of those exercises, but unfortunately, because we cannot join NATO until the war is finished, we weren't able to join them, obviously. And this is why Russia uses Ukraine to, as a hostage, trying to dictate their demands to the civilized world. As you may have probably noticed, Russia uses this terrorist tactic. They take hostages. In Donbass they have taken more than 2,000 kids as hostages. Currently they keep them on Russian territory. Unfortunately, today Russia has turned into an analog of ISIS, but fortunately for everybody, all the civilized world have now recognized Russia as a terrorist state. And another big achievement was getting rid of Russian propaganda, shutting down Russian TV channels and YouTube channels, as well as their propaganda pages on Facebook and other social media, because the biggest and scariest weapon of Russia has always been propaganda and brainwashing. Luckily for us, they have lost their main weapon. They are now using it only internally on the territory of Russia, and we can't do pretty much anything about it. But fortunately, all the world now knows who they really are. Question from Indonesia: are we afraid of Putin? Of course we are not afraid of Putin. Actually, we are winning this war already. We know that strategically Russians are not attacking as much as they did previously, and at specific spans on the front line we are counterattacking. So I think that our victory is only a matter of time. I cannot tell you the precise day of our victory. I hope it happens really soon, but eventually it's going to happen. I think Ukrainian victory is inevitable. Another good question from John Price. Do the Russian government pay compensation to the families of dead soldiers that they have sent to Ukraine? As far as I know, they do, but the thing is that since Russian ruble have dropped dramatically since the invasion, this sum of money is now a nonsense. There's another thing. We have a fridge train parked in Voznesensk full of Russian bodies, and we offered Russians to take their soldiers to Russia, but unfortunately they refuse. This means that they are not interested in bringing their dead soldiers back, because they will have to pay those money, and as we know, they don't have those money at this point. Question about the Azov battalion. In Azov they have companies consisting from people from other countries like Georgia, like Azerbaijan, and if everything said about Azov was true, they would never have like Jewish or Caucasian or other foreigners fighting in their battalion against Russians. Please keep in mind that the biggest Russian weapon is propaganda, and they can say all kinds of shit, including that our Ukrainian Jewish president is a Nazi, which is nonsense. Dear friends, I would like to say thank you to everyone. Thank you for your questions. I hope that I have answered at least some of them. I have also received a lot of supportive comments from you guys, and on behalf of my people, on behalf of our soldiers, I would like to express my appreciation to all of you, to all the civilized world who stands for Ukraine, because in Ukraine we are defending not just our land, we are defending whole civilized world. I will definitely keep you informed and updated on the news here in Ukraine. I'm really glad that you find my channel useful, and I will make sure to make it even better over time. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Operator Starsky, over and out.